I was about 2 hours from home, somewhere deep in the backroads of West Virginia. It was around 1:30 at night, and I was driving through a stretch of forest so thick it swallowed my high beams. I just left my uncle's cabin where I'd spent the last few days helping him recover from knee surgery. I was exhausted, ready to collapse in bed next to my daughter, but I remember thinking how still the world felt. Quiet, peaceful, like it was holding its breath. That's when I saw her. She was standing on the edge of the road right where the gravel shoulder disappeared into the trees. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, thin, barefoot, wearing a white nightgown that clung to her like it had just come out of the rain. She had long, dark hair and was holding a stuffed bunny with one ear missing. My chest locked up. I hit the brakes hard. My tires skidded, the car fishtailed slightly before settling. I sat frozen, my fingers tight around the wheel, heart hammering in my throat. My first thought was that she had to be hurt or lost. No one leaves a child out here alone at this hour. My second thought, something was wrong. Very wrong. I rolled the window down. "Hey, are you okay?" She didn't move, just looked at me, eyes wide and glassy, like she wasn't fully awake. Her face was pale, cheeks streaked with what looked like dirt or dried blood. I couldn't tell in the low light. Then she took one step forward and spoke. "Please," she said, "my mom's hurt. She needs help." Her voice wasn't panicked. It was soft, controlled, too calm for what she was saying. I glanced around. No sign of a vehicle, no crash, no movement in the trees. I leaned out of the window. "Where is she?" "In the woods," she said, pointing behind her. "She's bleeding. She told me to find someone." My first instinct was to call it in. I'm an EMT. I've seen terrible things, but this didn't feel right from the moment I saw her. Still, if there was a woman out there injured and this girl was her only help, what choice did I have? I shut off the engine, grabbed my med kit from the passenger seat, and stepped out into the cold air. The girl was already walking toward the tree line, barefoot on the wet gravel, clutching that rabbit like it was glued to her hand. She didn't say anything else, just looked back once to make sure I was following. I was. As I walked behind her, I kept thinking of my daughter, Miri. She was 9, just a little older than this girl. I'd kissed her goodnight 2 nights ago and promised I'd be home before she woke up. I wondered if she was dreaming peacefully right now while her mom was following a strange girl into the woods. I didn't ask her name. I don't know why. It felt like it would break something delicate, like if I pushed too hard, she'd disappear. After a few steps into the trees, I looked back toward my car. The road had already vanished behind the branches. I swallowed hard and kept moving. She walked ahead of me like she knew exactly where she was going. No hesitation, no fear, just steady steps straight into the dark. I don't know how long we walked. 5 minutes? 10? And then she stopped. She turned to me and pointed at a small clearing. "She's over there," she said. "You'll find her if you dig." That's when the cold hit me, not the air. Something inside, like all the warmth drained from my body in an instant. I stared at the ground where she pointed. Just dirt, moss, and tree roots. No blood, no signs of a person, just silence. "What do you mean, dig? Where is she?" The girl looked at me and smiled. Not a sweet smile, not a relieved one. A smile that didn't fit the moment at all. "She's waiting." I blinked. She turned toward the trees and began walking away. "Wait! Hey!" She didn't run. She didn't look back. She just moved into the shadows and vanished between the trunks. I stood there, alone, my heart pounding so hard it felt like I might pass out. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and dialed 911. "My name is Alina Carter," I told the dispatcher. "I'm an EMT. I was flagged down by a little girl on Route 6 near Cold Hollow. She said her mom was hurt in the woods, but now she's gone. She said I'd find her mom if I dug." I gave them my GPS location and stayed put. It took them 20 minutes to reach me. What they found next, I still wish I'd just kept driving. The road that night felt like it went on forever. I had been driving for nearly an hour since leaving my uncle's place, and the silence had started to feel like a blanket, the kind that's too warm and too heavy. The woods on either side of me were thick, full of trees that leaned in like they were listening. My high beams were the only thing lighting the road, and the occasional fog that rolled across my windshield made it feel like I was driving through smoke. I was used to this kind of drive. Quiet, remote, lonely. I didn't mind being alone, not anymore. It was early August, the kind of night where the air feels too still. I had rolled down my window a few inches, hoping the cool air would keep me awake. I was running on caffeine, muscle memory, and the last bit of adrenaline I'd gotten from helping my uncle finish his pain meds schedule before I left. He'd had surgery on both knees, and I'd taken the week off to care for him. It was a small thing, but it made me feel useful. That week had been good for both of us. My Uncle Norin isn't exactly chatty, but there's something comforting about the quiet kind of company he gives. The house smelled like old wood and Vicks VapoRub. He watched old black and white westerns. I cooked soup, iced his knees, and let my brain rest for the first time in months. Now I was headed home to my daughter, Miri, 9 years old, full of questions, and never without a book in her hands. She'd been staying with my best friend, Claire, while I was away. I missed her more than I thought I would. It's not easy being a single parent, especially when your job pulls you in every direction and you're constantly fighting off guilt. Miri had been asking about her grandmother again. My mom passed away almost a year ago. Cancer. It was fast, brutal, and didn't leave us much time to process anything. Some days I still reach for the phone to call her. I still hear her voice when I'm driving alone like this. She'd always warned me to keep a granola bar in the glove box and never drive tired. She worried about everything, even when I became an EMT and swore I could take care of myself. I think about her a lot on nights like this. Maybe because I feel her absence more in the silence, or maybe because there's something about the woods that makes you think about ghosts. The road stretched on, empty. I passed an old church, its steeple half collapsed and surrounded by weeds. Then a rusted road sign for Cold Hollow, barely readable through the grime. I recognized it from years ago, when my parents used to take us hiking out here. The woods hadn't changed, still beautiful, still unforgiving. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I thought about the early morning ahead. I'd promised Miri pancakes, real ones, not frozen. She'd made me pinky swear before I left. I checked my phone. No service. Not unusual for this stretch. I wasn't nervous. Not yet. Just tired. I remember humming along to some low-volume music, not really hearing the lyrics, just letting the rhythm keep me focused. The stars were hidden behind thick clouds, and there was no moonlight. Everything outside the cone of my headlights looked like it had been erased. I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. No part of me was preparing for what was coming. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't alert. I wasn't on edge the way I am now anytime I drive alone after dark. All I could think about was home, about how I'd crawl into bed, pull Miri's blanket up over her shoulder, and whisper that I made it back, that I kept my promise. That's who I was before I saw her. A tired woman on a back road, running through the final stretch of a long week. Nothing extraordinary, nothing special, just someone trying to get home. When the girl appeared on the road, she didn't come out of nowhere. She was just suddenly there, standing where no child should ever be, especially not at that hour, dressed like she had walked out of a bad dream. I didn't slam the brakes because I thought she'd dart in front of me. I slammed them because something inside me screamed, not in fear, in recognition. Like some part of me already knew this wasn't just a lost child. This was something else. Everything that followed, every choice I made happened because of that moment, that pause. That look in her eyes, that strange stillness that told me I was about to step into something I wouldn't understand until it was too late. I was Alina Carter, EMT mother, daughter of a woman who never believed in ghosts. And I was about to learn what happens when you stop for someone you were never supposed to see. She didn't wait for me to speak. As soon as I stepped out of the car, she turned and started walking toward the trees. I grabbed my medkit from the passenger seat and jogged to catch up. The forest swallowed her quickly. There was no trail, just a narrow opening between thick brush and overgrown branches. She moved through it like she'd done it 100 times. "Wait," I called out. "What's your name?" She didn't answer. I followed anyway. The forest was wet and quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every footstep and breath. The girl moved fast for someone barefoot. I tried not to think about how she was walking on broken twigs and sharp stones without flinching. Her nightgown clung to her knees. The stuffed bunny dragged along beside her, its matted fabric catching on ferns and roots. "Where's your mom?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Can she walk? Did she fall?" "She's lying down," the girl said without turning. "She said not to move her." I didn't like how she said it. Not the words, but the rhythm of them. Like she was reciting something from memory. "How long has she been out here?" I asked. "Since the bad man put her there." I stopped walking for half a second. The flashlight in my hand wobbled as I tightened my grip on the handle. The girl kept going, like she hadn't said anything unusual. I caught up and kept my eyes on her instead of the trees. She didn't seem scared. She didn't look lost or panicked. Her face was smooth, expressionless. Her voice never wavered. I tried again. "I'm going to help her, okay? That's what I do. I'm an EMT. Can you tell me what happened? Did someone hurt your mom?" She looked over her shoulder at me for the first time. Her eyes were big, dark, and calm. "She told me to find someone who could help," she said. She said someone kind. There was something about the way she said that last word, kind, like it wasn't a compliment, like it was a warning. My boots sank into wet earth as we walked deeper into the trees. The smell of moss and old leaves clung to the air. My flashlight beam darted across tree trunks, rocks, patches of broken ground. No sign of another person, no torn fabric, no blood trail, no footprints other than ours. She stopped suddenly. "This is where," she said. "She's underneath." I blinked. "Underneath?" The girl pointed to a patch of earth covered in green moss and tangled roots. "She's there. You'll find her if you dig." I lowered the flashlight to the ground. Nothing looked disturbed. No signs of recent movement, just soil and damp leaves. I looked at the girl. "Did someone bury her?" She nodded slowly. "A long time ago, but she's still here." My chest tightened. My instincts were on fire. Nothing about this was adding up. If this had just happened, if her mother had been hurt tonight, there would be signs. The girl didn't have any dirt on her hands, no blood. Her feet were clean except for a few leaves clinging to her ankles. I took a cautious step back. "Okay," I said carefully. "I need to call for help. Can you wait here with me? We'll get someone to bring shovels and we'll make sure your mom gets out safely." She smiled. It was small and sudden and completely wrong for the moment. "You brought help," she said. Her voice sounded different, lighter, like she was proud of me, like she'd been waiting for this. My mouth went dry. I pulled out my phone, no signal. I turned away from her for a second just to get my bearings, to check for any landmark I could use. When I turned back, she was gone. I shouted. I called her name even though I didn't know it. I spun in every direction, moving the flashlight in wide sweeps, trying to catch movement. Nothing. Not a sound. No branches snapping. No rustling leaves. She had vanished as quickly as she'd appeared. I stood there shaking, hand still gripping my phone. My breath came fast. The world pressed in around me. I opened the emergency dial and called 911. When the operator picked up, I gave them my name, my GPS coordinates, and a rushed version of what had happened. "I was flagged down by a little girl," I said. "She said her mom was hurt in the woods. She brought me out here, told me to dig, then she disappeared." The dispatcher asked me to stay put. I told them I would. But every part of me wanted to run. I sat down on a fallen log and kept my eyes on the ground where the girl had pointed. I didn't dig. I couldn't bring myself to touch the earth. It didn't feel like a rescue anymore. It felt like something else, something older, something I didn't understand yet. I waited for the police. I waited for answers. And with every passing minute, I wished I had kept driving. The police told me to stay where I was. They said help was on the way and they'd reach me within 20 minutes, maybe less. I stayed on the line until they confirmed they had my GPS coordinates. Then the dispatcher told me to keep calm and not move from the location. I ended the call and stood alone in the dark. The spot where the girl had pointed still looked the same. Nothing disturbed, nothing broken. A patch of damp forest floor covered in moss and the beginnings of wild mushrooms. I kept the flashlight aimed at it like it might change if I blinked. I told myself not to touch anything. I wasn't law enforcement. I wasn't trained in crime scenes. But something kept pulling me back toward that patch of ground. I crouched down, running my hand across the surface. The moss was cold. Beneath it, the dirt felt oddly soft, not like the rest of the forest floor, like someone had turned it recently, like the earth was still trying to settle. My stomach turned. I sat back on my heels and looked around again, scanning the trees for the girl. She hadn't made a sound when she disappeared. No footsteps, no voice. Nothing to explain how someone so small could vanish so quickly. I called out again. No answer. I didn't know what to do. Every part of my training told me not to disturb the scene. But this didn't feel like a scene. It felt like a grave. And I couldn't shake the way she'd looked at me before she disappeared. Like I had passed some kind of test. Like I had done what she wanted. I opened my bag and found the folding trowel I kept for emergencies. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get started. I looked back toward the direction I'd come, half expecting someone to yell at me to stop. No one came. I took a breath and pushed the trowel into the ground. The top layer came up easily, loose soil, damp and dark. I dug slowly, carefully, inch by inch. I didn't want to know what was underneath, but I couldn't stop myself. Something was pulling me forward like I owed this moment something. Like the girl had passed the weight to me and I had no choice but to carry it. After maybe 5 or 6 inches, I hit something. It made a soft knock under the blade. I set the trowel down and brushed away the dirt with my hands. My fingers hit plastic. It was dark green and torn at the edges. A garbage bag. My stomach flipped, but I kept clearing the soil. The bag was thick and heavy, pulled tight over something that was roughly the size of a person curled up. I stepped back and stood up. My pulse roared in my ears. The sound of engines in the distance broke through the quiet. Headlights flickered through the trees. A police cruiser pulled into the clearing behind me, followed by a second one with search dogs and 2 officers carrying shovels. I didn't speak at first. I just pointed at the ground. They took over quickly. Tape was drawn, photos were taken, and I was asked to sit with one of the officers while they began carefully removing soil around the bag. I tried to explain what had happened. How the girl flagged me down. How she said her mom was hurt. How she led me here and then vanished. I expected disbelief. Instead, the officer listening to me stayed quiet, only writing notes. I saw the way his jaw tightened when I described the bunny in her hand. After a while, one of the officers at the dig site stood up and waved the others over. I couldn't see what they'd uncovered, but I heard someone curse under their breath. A few minutes later, the coroner arrived. Then more officers. Lights flooded the trees. Radios crackled. Voices dropped to whispers. A female detective walked over and introduced herself as Detective Moran. She had a calm, steady way of speaking that didn't offer comfort, only facts. "We've recovered a female body, partially decomposed, wrapped in a tarp inside the garbage bag," she said. "Based on what we've found, she's been there for years." I nodded, unable to speak. The detective looked at me carefully. "You said a little girl led you here. Did she tell you her name?" "No," I said, "but she said her mom was here, that she was bleeding, that I'd find her if I dug." The detective pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was grainy, clearly taken years ago. A woman with light brown hair and tired eyes stood next to a girl with long dark hair and a wide smile. She was holding a stuffed bunny with one ear missing. "Is that her?" the detective asked. I didn't need to look twice. "Yes," I said. "That's the girl I saw." Detective Moran stared at the screen for a second, then turned it toward her own team. "She's been dead since 2020, she said. "That's Leanie Dellington. She went missing with her mother 5 years ago." I couldn't feel my legs. I sat down in the dirt. I didn't know what to believe. I only knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard, what I had followed into the woods. She had asked for help. I had given it. And now there was no turning back. They worked through the night under portable floodlights. I sat on the back of an ambulance with a blanket around my shoulders, not because I was cold, but because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Officers moved back and forth across the clearing, voices low, faces unreadable. I kept looking toward the trees, half expecting the girl to walk back out, asking if we'd found her mother yet. The forensic team eventually pulled 2 separate bags from the ground. The first one was larger, the second smaller. One of the officers quietly handed Detective Moran a child-sized shoe, caked in mud. A moment later, someone called for her again. They had found something inside the second bag. She looked over her shoulder at me, hesitated, then walked to the edge of the taped-off area. I turned away. I couldn't watch anymore. An officer sat next to me and handed me a bottle of water. His name was Redmond. He didn't say much, just stayed nearby like he understood what silence could mean to someone in shock. After about an hour, Detective Moran returned with a folder under her arm. She sat down across from me, set the folder aside, and met my eyes. "We found both victims," she said, "Sarah Dellington and her daughter Leanie. Based on the condition of the remains, it looks like they were buried at least 4 or 5 years ago. Forensic markers match their case file." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The air felt too thick to breathe. She continued, her voice steady but softer. "We also found something else. Something that confirms your story." She opened the folder and removed 2 photos. One showed the stuffed bunny, filthy, decayed, but still recognizable. One ear was missing, the same one I had seen in the girl's hand just hours earlier. The second photo showed a drawing, childlike, crayon on torn notebook paper, a figure that looked like a little girl holding hands with someone in a red shirt and brown hair. Me. I stared at it in disbelief. "Where did you find this?" "In the bag with Leanie," she said, "folded up and sealed in plastic. Whoever buried her wanted to preserve it. We're guessing the killer let her keep it." I felt the bottom of my stomach drop. "But that's me." "We believe you," she said. "It's not the first time we've had unexplained sightings linked to unresolved trauma. But this is different. You didn't just see something. You were part of her closure." I looked down at the photo again, the little hand in mine, the smile on the drawing, the red shirt I'd been wearing earlier that night. Detective Moran went quiet for a moment, then leaned forward. "Here's what we know," she said. "Sarah Dellington filed a domestic violence report 6 months before she and Leanie vanished. Her boyfriend at the time had a history of controlling behavior, but no one could link him to their disappearance. We reopened the case 2 years ago, but with no new leads. Tonight, because of you, we found their remains in a location not even listed in the original case files." I tried to speak, but my throat burned. "Why now?" I asked. "Why would she come to me after all this time?" Moran looked back toward the forest. "She may have tried before," she said. "You were just the one who listened." The sun was beginning to rise, painting pale gold across the tops of the trees. I watched the officers prepare to transport the remains. I watched them zip the body bags closed with careful hands. I didn't know how to feel. Relief wasn't the right word. It felt more like sorrow laced with clarity, like something terrible had been hiding in the dark for years, and tonight it was finally forced into the light. Moran turned back to me one more time before leaving. "I need to ask one last thing," she said. "When the girl spoke to you, did she say anything unusual? Something out of place?" I nodded slowly. "She told me I'd find her if I dug," I said. "Then she said her mother told her to find someone kind, someone who would help." The detective was quiet for a moment, then gave a short nod. She didn't need to ask anything else. "They let me leave just after 7. I didn't want to. I didn't know how I'd go back to the normal rhythm of life after what I'd seen. But I also knew Miri would be waking up soon, expecting pancakes and her mom to be home. I walked back to my car. The back seat still smelled like hand sanitizer and leftover coffee. My jacket was damp from the ground. As I reached for the keys, I looked in the rearview mirror. There was nothing there, just my face. Pale, tired, changed. But for a moment, I swore I could feel her in the passenger seat. That same stillness, that quiet sense of something watching, not in fear, not in anger, just waiting. And I understood then. She didn't lead me there for her mother. She led me there because they both needed to be found, together. She had waited long enough. I didn't go straight home that morning. I stopped at a diner a few miles outside of town. My hands were shaking too badly to drive, and my clothes still smelled like wet leaves and damp soil. I sat in a booth by the window and ordered coffee I didn't drink and pancakes I couldn't eat. The waitress noticed. She didn't ask questions, just kept my cup full and made sure I had a blanket to wrap around my shoulders. I think she thought I'd been in a car accident. I let her believe that. When I finally got home, Miri was still asleep. Her hair was a tangled halo across the pillow, her book half open on the bed beside her. I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. I'd never felt more protective in my life, or more aware of how fragile everything really is. That night in the woods changed something in me. For weeks, I couldn't sleep with the lights off. Any small sound, A creak, a breeze, the heater switching on made me sit up straight in bed. I stopped driving back roads completely. Even in the daytime, the sight of thick trees pressing against the road made my throat close up. But the fear didn't last forever. What stayed was something different. A heaviness, a kind of mourning I didn't know how to explain. I had never met Sarah Dellington when she was alive. I had never known her daughter while she was breathing. But I think about them every day. They weren't just a story on the news or a cold case on a shelf. They were real. They had birthdays, laughs, fights, favorite songs. They had a life before someone took it from them. And all that remained of them, all that reached out into the world after death, was a little girl with a stuffed bunny who just wanted someone to care. I went to the funeral. It was quiet and private. A few detectives, a forensic psychologist, a social worker who had handled their case years ago. The bodies were buried together in a small cemetery just outside Charleston, under a tree that turns orange in the fall. The headstone is simple, just their names, a shared date, and the words "finally found." I brought flowers, pink ones, the kind Miri likes. I placed them at the base of the stone and stood there for a long time, unsure of what to say. Eventually, I whispered the only thing I hadn't said that night in the woods. "Thank you for trusting me." I don't tell many people what really happened. My official report stays clinical. A hiker led me to the location. The trail was hard to follow. The girl appeared distressed. The grave was discovered due to instinct and observation. But I know the truth. The truth is a child who died scared and alone found a way to bring her mother home. She didn't ask for vengeance. She didn't scream for justice. She asked for help. And I believe I was meant to hear her. Some people call that fate. Some call it trauma. I don't argue with either. All I know is that I've spent my career trying to save people in their worst moments. And that night, someone who couldn't be saved gave me the chance to do something that mattered. Miri still doesn't know the full story. She asked why I was gone longer than expected, and I told her I had to help someone who got lost in the woods. She asked if they were okay. I told her yes, they were okay now. But one day, when she's older, I'll tell her everything. Not just about what happened, but what it meant. I'll tell her that sometimes the world is darker than we want it to be, and that good people get taken too soon. But I'll also tell her that kindness matters, that listening matters, that even when no one else hears you, someone might still come. I've gone back to the clearing once since that night. I brought a lantern, a toy bunny, and a small note. I left them where the girl first stopped walking. I didn't see her. I didn't expect to. But I needed her to know I remembered, that I would always remember. Some nights, when the house is still and the street outside is empty, I think about how many voices go unheard, how many people never get found. That thought keeps me awake more than fear ever did. But then I think of her. How brave she must have been, how determined, how much love it must have taken to pull someone back to her, even after death. She didn't disappear. She didn't fade away. She led someone home, and I will never forget her. That night will always be a part of me, not because I saw something terrifying, but because I was trusted with something sacred, a message, a moment, a truth that had waited too long to be found. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, share it. Someone out there might need to hear it, maybe to believe, maybe to remember, or maybe just to realize that the smallest voice can still change everything. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your stories, or just how this made you feel. And if you want to hear more true stories like this, real moments that stay with you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's more to tell. And sometimes, the people who can no longer speak for themselves still deserve to be heard. Thank you for listening.